Do Catholics worship Mary? We don't. But it's understandable that there are some people who believe that we do. Because when you look at it, at the central point of every church, somewhere near the front, there is a statue or an image of Mary. Many people have images or statues of Mary in their houses. We have churches and schools named after Our Lady. We have hymns addressed to Mary. And two of the most famous Catholic prayers are the Hail Mary and the Rosary, which are prayers that are tied to Mary. But despite this, I can say with certainty that the relationship Catholics have with Mary is not one of worship. We don't worship Mary. The word the Church uses is venerate, which would be another way of saying we honor or we respect her. And in a lot of ways, you could sort of say these places where you come across these images, these prayers, and these songs is a lot more like the way in which you have various images up in your house of beloved relatives, grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings, people who don't live there anymore. We don't worship Mary, we honor her. And we honor her because she has a particularly unique role, not only in the history of our faith, but also in the life of the Church. You can see this in three particular places. One is the fact that she is chosen from every woman in all of history who would ever live to be the mother of Jesus. Now, the reality is, this is the part that all Christians agree with. Her part in the Christmas story. Where we look a little bit further is actually really rooted in the biblical stories. So, for example, we look at Mary as the ideal example of what it means to be a Christian. Why is that? Well, because Mary, when she's approached by God, when she's called by God through the Archangel Gabriel, she says yes. With her whole heart, she says, "Let it be done unto me according to your word." Now, this yes that she gives to God's call stands in stark contrast to what happened at the beginning of the story when God called Adam and Eve and they said no. Eve said no, Mary says yes. And by her yes, Christ came into the world. Well, that's what it's supposed to mean to be a Christian. When God calls us, we say yes, and by our yes, by our lives, Christ comes into the world. But there's a step further from that as well. And that shows up at the end of the Gospel of John. When Jesus is hanging on the cross, when Jesus is dying, and he looks down at his mother and the beloved disciple, which is John, and he says, "Woman, behold your son, my disciple, behold your mother." Now, on a surface level, what Jesus is doing in this moment is he is taking care of Mary. He's making sure that Mary is taken care of, that she has someone to take care of her material needs after he's gone. Because as a widow whose only son is about to die, she's going to need someone to take care of her. That's just the reality of first century Israel when women had no legal rights. We've always seen a second, deeper meaning to that commandment, to that direction from Jesus on the cross. That is the fact that John stands in for all of us. That when he says to Mary, "Behold your son," well, in a sense, he's asking of Mary a certain care for all who would come after John, for all of the church. And in turn, that we would have a certain respect and reverence for his mother. Now, there's precedent for this when you look to the Old Testament, to the story of Israel. When Israel had kings, the queen was not the wife of the king, because quite often the kings had multiple wives, and that would have just been complicated. But the queen was the mother of the king. So, for example, at the time of King Solomon, the queen mother was Bathsheba. And you actually see certain points in the story of Solomon where others come to Bathsheba to make an appeal to the king. And so they would go to the queen mother, they would make their appeal, their request made known, and then the queen mother would go to the king. And the king would hear, and then he would make his own decision. It's not that Mary can make Jesus do something he doesn't want to do. But it's another avenue that God has given us to connect with him, to make our requests known to him. But always, and very importantly, Mary's response to whatever our requests are is the same direction she gave the servants during the wedding at Cana. She brought them to Jesus, and she told them, "Do whatever he tells you." So do we worship Mary? No, we don't. But does she play this important part, not only in salvation history, but in the ongoing life of the church? Yes, she does. And we are blessed because of it.